everybody, welcome to AESL 563 American Idioms. This is for my IVC class in spring 2020. You are here with me, Susie Undertree, or Professor Coleman, as I'm known at IVC. I will be going over chapters 3 and 4, some select idioms from our book, English for Everyone, English Idioms. I'm really excited to be sharing this with you today, so here we go. The first thing we'll be doing in chapter 3 is idioms about appearance and background. And the very first idiom that we're going to be talking about is one of my favorites. It's a kind of positive idiom for men. It's rather a masculine idiom, and it's having a 5 o'clock shadow or a 5 o'clock shadow. And a 5 o'clock shadow actually has nothing to do with the actual time and o'clock, but rather it has to do with the fact that men's facial hair generally grows all day long, and it used to be when in a more traditional society, when men would go to work for 9 to 5, they would get up in the morning in the business world. They would get up in the morning and they would shave before they went to work because facial hair in the business world generally wasn't that common like it is today. So they would shave and they would have a clean shaven look. In fact, we have other idioms about being clean shaven. And so by 5 o'clock, their hair would have grown in just a tiny bit, and thus you would have a little bitty shadow. So a beginning of a beard is also called having a 5 o'clock shadow. Our example sentence for that would be, it is not a good idea to have a 5 o'clock shadow when going on a job interview because you want to be clean shaven, or you could have a beard, but you don't want to have that in-between look like this particular gentleman does right here. The next idiom that we have is another personal favorite of mine, looks like one has seen a ghost. And this idiom means to appear shocked or scared. And we can remember that because when we're talking about the supernatural, ghosts are usually scary, and so they make us feel scared. And so we can see here this little baby is rather scared. So an example sentence that we have for that is when Professor Coleman, or Professor C, when Professor C reminded the students. So an example sentence that we have for that is when Professor C reminded the students of the quiz, they looked like they had seen a ghost because they were shocked or scared. The next idiom that we have from chapter 3 is another one of my favorites, and it is looking like a drowned cat. Now, we don't actually drown cats, and I don't agree with drowning cats. Remember, it's an idiom, and the idea behind it is that when cats get wet, they usually look awful because cats don't like to get wet. Generally, they don't like water. And it means you're being very wet and disheveled or messy. You just look awful. And look at this cat. It is not a happy cat. And so an example sentence for that is, if you go out in the storm, you will end up looking like a drowned cat. So this is a really practical idiom, especially if you live anywhere where there is water. We don't usually use it for snow in the winter, but absolutely if it's raining, you could use drowned cat. The next slide that we have is an interesting one. One of the reasons I like this idiom so much is because we use it in the Midwest, where I'm from Oklahoma, and the idiom is, like butter wouldn't melt in the mouth. You might not hear it very much in California, but it's a fun kind of idiom. And butter actually melts, if you think about it, in the heat. It melts in the stove or on the counter or in the sunshine, but it doesn't melt in the refrigerator where it's cool. And the idea behind this is a person is very cool or calm and acting like they've done nothing wrong, even though they have done something wrong and they're actually guilty. So you use like butter wouldn't melt in the mouth when the person has actually done something wrong, but they act very innocent and they're very cool about it. So for example, she looked like butter wouldn't melt in her mouth, saying it wasn't her fault, but I still knew she was lying. So this is kind of a fun idiom to use, although we would rather people not do things wrong in the first place, right? The next idiom is one that you've probably heard of before, and it's called keeping up appearances. We have another one similar, keeping up with the Joneses. It's the same kind of idea, and that we are acting as if things are good, even if when they're not, or we're trying to keep up with the appearances of things being good. And the example for that would be, my brother bought a new car to keep up appearances, even though he just lost his job. Keeping up appearances doesn't have to be regarding possessions. Sometimes we keep up appearances in relationships as well. We act like everything is okay, even when it's not. A similar idiom to appearances is the next one, which is looking the part. Looking the part is being dressed or styled appropriately, whatever the part may be. So if you want to be a policeman, you look the part. Or if you want to be a teacher, you look the part. And an example for that would be, looking the part will help you get the job you want. A similar idiom, which isn't in our book, is fake it until you make it. That is, look the part that you want to have so that you can, in fact, have that part in real life. Another idiom that we have is being a pillar of the community. And what that means is being an important or respected person. Because if we think about it, a pillar is something that holds up the roof, or it holds up the building, so it holds up the entire community. An example sentence of that could be, doctors are considered pillars of the community. Another slide that we have is less than an idiom and more like a saying, in that not having two pennies to rub together. And this is kind of fun if you think about it. If you have two pennies, where would they be rubbing together? They would probably be in your pocket, because they would be in your pocket or your handbag, and they would be rubbing side by side. So if you don't have two pennies rubbing together, then you are really poor, because you don't even have two pennies. An example sentence for that would be, when I first got married, I didn't have two pennies to rub together, because I was in fact pretty poor when I first got married. So that's pretty much it for Chapter 3. There are other idioms in the book. If you want to get your own copy and look through that, it's a pretty neat book. Chapter 4 is about personality traits. And this is a fun chapter because we really like to use idioms to talk about when we are describing people. So the first one that we have is a selfish streak. Now this is interesting because streak has various meanings. You have to be careful when you're looking at streak that you don't do stake, because that could be spelling issue, or street, and so it's streak. Selfish streak. And all it really means is to be selfish. So you could in fact just say that this person is selfish. If you wanted to have an idiomatic usage of it, you could say the person is having a selfish streak. Example sentence for that is, I can't be friends with someone who has a selfish streak, because I personally don't like selfish people. I'm pretty generous, and I prefer people in my life to be generous as well. Another example is be a barrel of laughs. And this is fun. It's kind of pretty obvious what it means. It means a lot of laughs. So a barrel, you might not know what a barrel is because we don't probably go around seeing a lot of barrels. But a barrel is basically just a big container that holds things. And in this case, the barrel is holding a whole bunch of laughs. So if you're a barrel of laughs, it means that you're a fun person. You could also use it to describe a situation. So our example sentence is, I want my idiom class to be a barrel of laughs, because it would be fun if we were having a lot of fun in this class. It's more fun to learn language, especially idiomatic language, when we're having a barrel of laughs. The next idiom has a negative connotation, and it is to be two-faced. It means to be hypocritical, to have two sides. Sometimes we like to think having two sides is good, but in this case, we're talking about a negative kind of two-faced where I'm using one side for one person and one side for another person. So this particular idiom almost always is a criticism of somebody rather than a compliment. And our example sentence is, I don't like to be friends with someone who is two-faced. Then we move on to some positive statements. Be down to earth. Earth is usually a positive connotative idea. This case it means to be practical and simple. In the picture we have a picture of someone hugging a tree. We have other idiomatic kinds of words like earth mother and earth lover or tree hugger. These are all kinds of other idiomatic phrases that we use when we're talking about being down to earth. An example sentence would be, I like my friends to be down to earth people, or simple and practical people. A similar kind of positive idiom is not to hurt a fly. So if you will not even hurt a fly, that means you're pretty harmless. You're so nice that you won't even stop a fly with a fly swatter. So our example sentence with that is, my best friend would not hurt a fly. The next idiom that we have in chapter 4 is an interesting one. It's about dogs. In chapter 3 we had a cat idiom. Now we have a dog idiom. And this idiom is, have a bark worse than a bite. So what this idiom means is that the thing, the situation, the person seems scarier than it actually is. So whatever it is seems actually scarier. The bark, the woof woof, seems a lot worse than the actual biting and the pain of the teeth. So our sample sentence here is, I know that Bob seems intimidating, but really his bark is worse than his bite. So Bob is probably a nice guy, he just seems kind of scary. Our next two slides go hand in hand, which is kind of fun. The first one is about being an introvert, and it is being a lone wolf. Wolves are generally considered solitary or individuals, which is interesting because they also run in a pack. I don't know how that makes them introverted, but be a lone wolf is a kind of idiomatic phrase, and we say that for people. It has both negative and positive connotations because it means to prefer to work alone, be an introvert, and in that case, we kind of think about it as being an introvert and a negative, right? I'm a lone wolf, I don't want to be with anybody else. But it can also be a strong characteristic. I'm strong and I'm a lone wolf, I'm a leader. So it really depends in context how it is put together. Our example sentence here is, you can be a lone wolf and still be successful in school, but it is harder. Do keep in mind, though, that a lone wolf is almost always considered an introvert. The next idiom, in contrast, is an extrovert, and this is a social butterfly. A social butterfly is a very sociable person. It is, in fact, an extrovert all the way. A social butterfly is an extrovert. And here's our example sentence for that. Sometimes it seems that everything is easier for the social butterfly because the American educational system sometimes seems like it's just easier if you're a social butterfly, flitting from here to there, talking to people. But you can still be a lone wolf. You just have to work harder. Our next idiom is kind of fun. Be the salt of the earth. Now, we have learned another idiom in this very lecture that was similar to that. What was it? Do you remember? Be down to earth. So here we have another earth one. Be the salt of the earth. So again, the earth has to do with being kind, being practical, being simple. Salt used to be money back in the day. Salt was used for money and for exchange. So this is like being down to earth. Being down to earth, be the salt of the earth. They're very similar kinds of idioms. And our example sentence is, I was complimented when he called me the salt of the earth. The next one is fun because it's also food, but it's very different. Be as cool as a cucumber. Be as cool as a cucumber. I love this. You see the cucumber and he's all hanging out with the tomatoes. To be as cool as a cucumber simply means to be calm and relaxed. And you can be calm and relaxed any old time. Our example sentence is, he was as cool as a cucumber during the presentation. We could be cool as a cucumber in class, walking through life. We can just be as cool as a cucumber if we want to be. I love that idiom. So that was pretty much it for chapter 4. And in the blink of an eye, another idiom that means really quickly, we are finished. I enjoyed being here with you today. I hope you learned some idioms. If you would like to comment below, go right ahead. I'd love to hear anything you have to say. If you want to like this video, do that as well. Let your friends know about it. If you'd like to subscribe to my channel, you can do that too. I hope to see you next time. Have a great day, everybody.